Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee, home to 24/7 excitement, dining, and an on-site hotel at 1721 West Canal Street. More information at potawatomi.com.
Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape the community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
The Milano Cortina 2026 Winter Olympic Games are coming up in February. Athletes from across the globe will be performing together on the highest platform their sport can reach. It's an exciting time not just for the athletes who have trained incredibly hard to qualify, but for all of us watching from home. In this Winter Olympic Games, we have a fellow Wisconsinite to cheer on, Staff Sargent Deedra Irwin. She's on Team USA competing in the biathlon and currently holds the best placement for an American athlete in the event with her 7th place finish from her Olympic debut in Beijing. Irwin is from Pulaski, Wisconsin, and is also part of the Army's World-Class Athlete Program. To share more about how she got into the biathlon and her outlook on the upcoming Olympics, she joins me now. Deedra, welcome to Lake Effect. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're from Pulaski, Wisconsin. So can you share a bit more about your Midwestern roots and how you were first introduced to the biathlon? Because this wasn't your first sport of choice, right?
Definitely not. I grew up in Pulaski, Wisconsin. It's about 20, 30 minutes outside of Green Bay now with those really nice highways they built since I lived there. It's a small rural farm community, most known for Pulaski polka days, polka music and really good bakery downtown that I love, making good donuts and punchkis and pierogi, all that stuff. So I grew up in that area, mostly with dreams of becoming an Olympic runner, an Olympic track star. But as life would have it, I didn't get what I wanted. And, as my injuries in track and field and cross country started coming up, I got introduced to Nordic skiing to help me stay in shape and kind of reduce the impact on my body. And it has become a lifestyle for me ever since. So when I was 16 years old, I got introduced to the Ashwaubenon Nordic Ski Club based out of Ashwaubenon, Wisconsin. And I've been Nordic skiing ever since. I went to college at Michigan Technological University up in the UP. Really enjoyed the snowstorms there and did cross-country running, track and field, and Nordic skiing for my 5 years that I was there. And then after college, I pursued a little bit of professional skiing out in Sun Valley, Idaho, with a team out there. And right when I was thinking about retiring, one of my best friends told me I should try biathlon. And I kind of didn't really know what to expect when she kind of sent me this application for a talent ID camp, but it turned into, let's give it a try for a year. It's now 8.5 years later, going to my second Olympics. And it is just, to me, the most interesting, perfect sport that I could have ever gotten into. It's all endurance, plus the huge puzzle piece of precision rifle marksmanship that, really keeps me so intrigued every day I get to train, because it's never perfect. There's always some wind, there's snow, there's something, and you have to find that perfect balance between your fitness and your focus.
Yeah, let's get into that a little more. You call the biathlon a, quote, complicated, unforgiving, and addicting sport. So for anyone unfamiliar, you can just briefly explain what the sport entails and why it grips you so tightly, especially kind of coming into it somewhat accidentally, right? Like not intentionally.
Definitely. So it's a combination of Nordic skiing, specifically skate skiing, and rifle marksmanship. So I ski with a rifle as a backpack. And we'll ski a loop anywhere from 2 to 3K for the women. And we'll stop and shoot prone in the middle of our race. That's when you're laying down on your stomach. We're shooting a target 50 meters away. We have 5 bullets for 5 targets. Hopefully you hit them all and you get to go back on course. But if you don't, you actually have to do penalty loops. And so you have to ski even more depending on how many shots you missed. And then you go back out on course and then you come back into the same range. And now you have to shoot standing targets. They're a little bit bigger, but you're a little bit more vulnerable in a standing position. The wind can be a little more aggressive and you have to try and do the same thing. 5 bullets for 5 targets. And so hopefully you hit them all. You get to go and finish the race. If not, you're in the penalty loop. So That's the simplest way to explain it of, if you're the fastest skier out there, the fastest and most precise shooter, you're winning the race.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that make any race a variability, right? Like you're never going to have the same performance twice. Is that part of the addicting nature of it?
Definitely. I mean, you can go one week, I think, just me starting out this season, one week I clean a sprint and I'm in 17th place. One week later, I have the same exact performance, shoot 10 for 10 again, and I'm in 10th place. And so you have these variabilities of what was my ski speed that day? How long did I stay on the range to hit all 10 of those targets? And how were my competitors that day too? One of my old teammates, I think she described it perfectly, is especially at the Olympics, you have about 50 women on the start line who could win the race that day. And I think that's why biathlon is so exciting to watch, because you can have the fastest skier out there on the course just destroying all of us. But if they can't hit any targets that day, they're not winning a race. So I think that's finding that balance in biathlon of, how fast can I be? How precise can I be? How focused can I be? Where to push, where to hold back. And that's, I think, the addicting part too, as an athlete, is you're in the race and you're having all of these thoughts while you're skiing to make sure you're skiing fast. And then you have to get on the range and flip that focus to immediately be as accurate as possible. And I have about 30 seconds to do it if I want to be competitive, and if I want to medal today. And so, and then for me, that's, I think, the most addicting thing is I started out the season shooting an individual and I missed 4 shots because I clicked wrong into the wind and there were some wind gusts. And that's how I started my race. And I still had 3 more shooting bouts that I had to kind of regain my focus throughout the 45 minutes that I was racing to come back into the range and make sure I'm hitting targets and doing the job for the rest of the race. So it's that very addicting, like when you miss, you want to kind of go back and you want to do it right. You're like, no, I know I could do this. We train so much all year long for 4 to 8. I've been training as an endurance athlete since I was in 5th grade. So it's kind of that addicting part of it is you want to find and perfect as much of it as you can.
Part of your athletic journey involves the military. You're in the Army's world-class athlete program, which is a long-standing tradition of soldier athletes competing in their sport of choice. So can you share more about your journey from Pulaski to the military?
Definitely, that was another element of my athletic career that kind of just wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. Same with joining biathlon. I just sort of found it and then found a way to make it work. And I think the same thing happened with me for the military. I joined biathlon and I learned about the National Guard biathlon program based in Jericho, Vermont. And, student loans, I was turning 26. So I was losing my health care from my parents for, coming up. And there was just a lot of life choices. And for me, signing a 6-year contract with the military was kind of a no-brainer. I could pursue this awesome athletic career and I could pay my student loans and I could have health benefits and I could build this career outside of just being an athlete. And so for me, joining was so smart. And then after making the last Olympics and learning more about the world-class athlete program, that also was a really easy transition for me to represent such a high-level, talented program that has so many athletes spread across the U.S. in so many different sports. And I've been able to meet quite a few of them. And all of our stories are so inspirational and so unique. And it's such a great collaboration and team environment to be a part of as a U.S. soldier and as a soldier athlete in the program. So I've been incredibly lucky to be able to join the military and have not just a really successful athletic career, but also be able to know I have a professional career to go to when I do decide to stop being an athlete as a soldier, which I think is something that a lot of athletes don't necessarily get to have in tandem sometimes. You're either an athlete or you have a career. And for me, I'm able to have both of those because of the U.S. Army and the world-class athlete program.
I imagine there's a lot of logistics and mapping you have to do, right? Not just in training, but with this dual career as an athlete and a soldier. So you're technically a remote athlete in Vermont, but technically you're stationed in Colorado, right? So can you explain some of the logistics of how you manage these dual identities?
Yeah, I mean, we have an incredible support staff in Fort Carson, Colorado on the base. And so I'm in contact with them weekly so that they know where I'm at, where I'm racing. And I'm a platoon sergeant for some of the other soldier athletes too. So I'm helping manage some Nordic combined athletes, figure skater, the other biathletes that are on my team. And so there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of logistics and communication. But I think that's also a really cool thing to learn in the military. You're learning how to manage yourself. You're not just kind of wandering around. You have a lot of people behind you supporting you. We have nutritionists. We have, public affairs officers helping us with interviews. There's so many people behind the scenes at the World Class Athlete Program that really make being an athlete traveling internationally so much more reasonable and easy, even though sometimes people are like, how do you balance both? So it's really just, communication and teamwork. And I think the World Class Athlete Program is full of amazing support staff that help it work out. Even though I am a remote athlete, I'm very connected to all of the staff we have in Fort Carson.
I'm going to take a moment to reintroduce you. I'm Audrey Nowakowski, and you're listening to Lake Effect. Today, I'm joined by Staff Sergeant Deedra Irwin, and she is on Team USA for the biathlon for the upcoming Winter Olympics. So with the biathlon, it's obviously a winter sport, but if you're not in a place with, it's maybe a warm season or you're traveling, it's the off season, what does your training look like when it's not winter all the time where you can actually be on skis?
Yeah, so we have these fancy contraptions called roller skis, which anybody in Wisconsin has probably seen me out there on the bug line in the Waukesha, Menominee Falls area on my roller skis, visiting my family. And so they're a really awesome summer training tool for us that gets us as close to Nordic skiing as possible. And so we have these little rubber wheels that allow us to go on asphalt, and we use the same poles, the same boots. And when we're in a place like Brillion, Wisconsin now that has a roller ski track connected to a biathlon range, we're actually able to do pretty much our entire sport on pavement and on a real shooting range. So that's kind of our main training tool, as close as we can get to the biathlon and skiing in the winter. But I do everything from mountain biking, gravel biking, road biking, hiking, running, paddleboarding, kayaking, just anything to kind of like build the cardiovascular system. And then my fiance has got me into golf too, which I've realized is a lot like shooting. And one of my teammates, she's a pretty much an amateur professional golfer. And it is crazy how much forgiveness and focus you need to have on the golf course, very similar to on the range to get that ball to go where you want it to go. So we have a lot of different tools in our tool belt to kind of help us train for the endurance component and also the mental, precision shooting component that is biathlon.
All these different components you're talking about, I'm wondering, with all of your training, cross-training, everything you do, all the people you've worked with, what are some of your best or favorite techniques to practice for preparation?
Definitely. I mean, we're actually in about an hour, our shooting coach is going through some visualization with us, which I think is going to be kind of, we lay in a dark room, close our eyes, kind of figure out what race we want to focus on or what we want our focus to be, and try to like work through how to feel those pressures and how to, what to think about when we're coming onto the range or while we're out skiing. And I've definitely really enjoyed using visualization as a tool to help me deal with some of those pressures or some of those fine tuning things that I want to work on that when I'm out on the course or out training, I don't necessarily have the time to really like sit there and look and like nitpick at. And so we use a lot of, visualization tools, meditation, and that's a tiny part of that. So like there's so many components, I mean, including nutrition. We have, a bunch of staff here that are constantly like, we have a snack table outside in the hallway just to make sure we're eating and hydrating well. So there's a lot of extra little components to outside of just the racing component and training component that we're always trying to focus on and optimize.
So focusing on the Olympics here, you made your debut in Beijing, and those games were certainly a unique experience. And if anyone needs reminding, it was during the COVID-19 pandemic, so you didn't get the Olympic experience of crowds being able to see you compete. But you also had some major highs. You accomplished a historic 7th place finish at the games, and it was a personal best. And also, it's the highest ever placement for an American athlete in this event, period. So I'm just wondering, can you share some takeaways from this event for you? Like, even though it was abnormal, it was your first, so it's not like you had anything to compare it to, but you performed so well. So what are some of your takeaways from that experience?
I learned so much from those Olympics, and they were super unique. I think almost having less crowds and less media pressure and everything like that almost made it a little easier on me, it being my first Olympics. But definitely just going through the process of qualifying was so much, especially during a COVID season, that almost just when I made it and then I actually got to China and I was healthy and I knew I was racing, it was kind of like a weight just lifted. And I was like, okay, I'm here. Nobody expects anything. Let's just have fun. And then I did that result and blew everyone's mind, including my own, going from completely unranked to having, the seventh place finish. And so I think it was a huge confidence boost for me, and also just like a reminder of, when I'm enjoying the environment I'm in and when I just sort of decide that, I already made it to the show, let's just do the work, that big, awesome things can happen. And so I think that's kind of the mentality I'm definitely trying to bring to this next Olympics is I think we're the only sport that hasn't medaled in the Winter Olympics for Team USA. So everybody's definitely wanting to know if we're going to get that medal, and definitely trying to balance that pressure of like, yes, we want this, but also it's the Olympics, just try to enjoy the atmosphere. And this time my family's going to be there. And so definitely trying to handle those emotions of, seeing them in the crowd and having the ability to actually experience this Olympics with them is going to be amazing. And I think one big thing I learned from the 2022 Olympics was that you don't need an Olympic medal to have an Olympic moment. And for me, it was just amazing to be able to experience everything I was able to experience there. And if anybody follows my social media now or knows any of the other articles and stories, I also met my fiance there at the opening ceremonies. And that is another like super emotional, amazing thing that I get to look back on in the Beijing Olympics. So there were so many things at the Beijing Olympics that I'm so proud of. And I'm so happy I got to experience and really, take with me into my future. And I think going into this next Olympics, I want to make sure to savor those emotions and those moments, whether I have good races or not, being able to have not just my mom and my dad, but both of my brothers in the crowd at the Olympics is going to be amazing. They've never watched me race in Europe before, so I'm already like getting choked up thinking about, having them there. And, obviously we grew up together. They're my biggest fans. So it's going to be super emotional and super amazing. And I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, looking to the current games, how are you feeling? We're talking you're in Germany right now, getting ready for another race you have coming up. So how are you trying to balance this big impending event coming up, right? But you have so much to juggle in the meantime.
The World Cup is a tough field of racing on the women's side. I think, I had 2 mistakes on the range yesterday, and I'm, placed in the 40s. And that just shows the difference between when I clean a race, I can get a top 10, and just those couple of tiny, milliseconds of mistakes on the range, bumps you all the way down. So I think trying to fine tune that, feeling fast, feeling prepared, feeling like I can, achieve results under pressure. I think that's kind of what everybody's focusing on now. They're definitely, nobody's trying to peak right now. I'll say that. You can see it out on the course. Everybody's just definitely trying to start perfecting all the little parts so that when we get to the big stage, that's when we're all really, really performing. So I think I had a really great first trimester to start the season. I'm ranked in the top 30 in the world right now, so that's super exciting. And so I think I'm trying to just use that momentum and keep learning and not really adjusting too much, but really trying to figure out what mindset or, what can I focus on during a race or on the range that can really help me, when we have 60,000 people screaming in the stands at, in Italy when, and I'll be able to hear when the Italians are shooting because they get crazy. So, trying to be able to practice really focusing and really achieving, my best possible results when I get there.
Well, we'll be watching closely and cheering from you from Wisconsin. So for today, Deedra, I want to thank you so much again for taking the time and sharing more about your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking to people from Wisconsin. So hi, family.
Staff Sergeant Deedra Irwin is a biathlete on Team USA. She'll be competing in her second Olympics in Italy next month.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting wuwm.com/Lake Effect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.